5 things I learned from reading 20 books in 5 months. So before we get into this video, I just want to say that I'm not trying to be contrived in any way when I say that I read 20 books in 5 months. I swear, I bet a lot of people could probably get through way more books than what I have done. So this is in no way a kind of like a bragging thing, like, oh, look at me and how many books I read. This video is literally about the 5 things that I personally learned from creating more time for myself to read books. So at the end of October in 2020, I started to read more books because I knew I wanted to read more books and I knew I wanted to make time for reading more books because due to my schedule and how busy I can get, it can be very difficult for me to find time to read books apart from, let's say, like on the weekends. So I wanted to read more during the week, and I realized that the best way for me to actually find more time was to make more time. So I decided to wake up an hour earlier to read. So I used to wake up around 6 a.m. and now I wake up at 4:55. So I have time to get up, get dressed, make a cup of coffee, and have an hour or so to read. So the books that I read were a mixture of finance books, they were a mixture of personal development books, and books on spirituality. At the end of this video, I will list all 20 books that I read. So what did I learn from reading 20 books and making this new discipline of reading more? So the first thing that I learned was discipline equals freedom, self-control, and self-esteem. So the actual discipline of getting up earlier to read increased actually my confidence. And it increased also my self-discipline in other areas as well. Something that I talk about a lot, more in terms of confidence, is if you become confident in one thing, that confidence usually spreads out into other areas. So let's say, for example, you're really shy around women. Once you start becoming more confident around women and less shy, and you work on that, you start to become confident in other areas as well. So that's like an example of how confidence can spread into other areas. So after the first few weeks of reading and getting up earlier to read and installing that discipline of getting up an hour early, I found that I became a lot more proud of myself because this was something that I really wanted to do, and then I actually executed it and achieved it. I think one of the reasons why I carried on doing it and I stayed with that habit of getting up earlier is because I really wanted to get more intelligence. Like I really wanted to learn more things so I could help other people, because in my other videos, my coaching videos that are on dating and relationships and things, I got to a point a few months ago, and I still feel this way a little bit, but more so back then, was I felt like I didn't know enough to be able to have this as a career. I didn't feel like I knew enough to be able to help other people. Like I knew a lot about certain things, like certain parts about dating and relationships and personal development, but I felt like while I'm struggling in these other areas, and sometimes I'm really stuck for things to say to people, and I feel like I need to know more in order to help people. I felt like I just simply didn't know enough, and I felt like I needed to know more in order to help other people. So I thought like by reading more books I'd be able to do that, and I found actually that it has helped. Like me getting perhaps about 1 to 5% better when it comes to my own intelligence and my knowledge and the stuff that I'm able to teach other people. I became really proud of the fact that I was able to execute this discipline of getting up early and reading more books. So that was one of the huge motivators that helped me actually read more books and to actually want to get up at that time, because I felt like I needed to do other kinds of things that instilled discipline in order to help other people. Because my worst fear is becoming a hypocrite, like teaching people how to do certain things and not doing those kinds of things myself. That is like my worst fear, to not practice what I preach. So installing this new discipline really helped with that. And also by doing so, I gained a lot more information that I could help other people with. And because of that, my self-esteem raised quite a lot. So that's the first thing. You know, if you start reading more books or you make more time to read more books, Or it might not even be books. It could be like waking up an hour earlier to exercise or something. Or it could be waking up an extra hour early so you can spend more time with your family, or doing something else doing something else like working on your business. Because I know a lot of people, this is like the way I am as well. Like in the evenings, if I've been awake all day, like in the evenings, I get really, really tired. Like I don't have energy to do things in the evenings. So I need to do the most important things that I need to do in the morning or in the early afternoon. Like I can't, like my mental capacity can sometimes just be completely out by 5 p.m. So I kind of need that evening to just veg out and not really do that much, because I know that my mental capacity just isn't great in the evenings. Now I know some people probably are really groggy in the mornings and they come alive at night, but I'm the exact opposite of that. I need to do my most important tasks in the morning while my brain is still working. Like this recording right now I'm doing in the morning. If you're someone who's a night person, then perhaps you want to do your most important tasks in the evening. Or if you're like me, you may need to get up an hour earlier so you have more time to do the things that you know you need to do. So the second thing that I learned from reading 20 books in 5 months, I don't know enough. Like I still don't know enough. It really shed more light on the fact that I have so much more room to grow. Like in a way, compared to the other coaches that are here on YouTube, personal development coaches like, let's say like Tony Robbins, the most famous life coach in the world, I still feel really small compared to those titans. And what I learned from reading these books was how little I really still do know. But that's no way limiting, I don't think. Like, I don't mean that in a way that I'm really unempowered and weak. What I mean is that I have so much more to learn, and that kind of really excites me. That really fuels me, because I really do enjoy learning. I really do enjoy personal development and growth. I really value that. So, learning more and having more experiences, learning more, reading more books, knowing that there's things that I can still learn out there is actually a really exciting notion to me. But I doubt, I'll even scratch the surface in my lifetime, because, there's so many different things that we could learn about. There's things like architecture, engineering, we can't all learn everything. So we need to kind of hone down on the things that are really important to us. So obviously those things for me are like knowledge about dating, about relationships, and about personal development. That's kind of my area. So I need to read more on those certain topics, because those are the things that are important to me. There's no point me learning about engineering because I'm never going to use that. But it just shows you how much there is out there to learn, and actually also how easy it is to get hold of really important information that you could make a career out of. There are a lot of things on the internet that you can read information about for free. There's a lot of videos that you can watch for free, like this one, for example. So actually realizing that you don't know enough actually opens up opportunities. It's when you're closed-minded and you feel like you know everything there is to know that you become more limited. You need to continue to grow, and you need to continue to learn more things, especially in those fields that are really, really important to you, like your career. I notice sometimes that when I'm teaching my own advice, sometimes I forget things. Sometimes I forget my own advice. Sometimes I forget the things that I have personally learned from my own experiences, and then it takes me like watching an old video of mine to remember certain things that I've gone through and the things that I've taught before. It's kind of interesting, because if you don't keep up with the things that you already know, it can sometimes make you fall back a few steps, because you need to always be relearning basically what you've learned, because if you don't, you're probably just going to forget about it at some point. This is not one of the 20 books that I read, but in one of Stephen Covey's books, the most famous one, which is The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, he says that one of the habits of highly effective people is sharpening the saw, which is basically this notion of keeping yourself sharp and up to date with the knowledge that you already know, so you haven't forgotten anything, and also learning new things, new skills, and new information. So the third thing that I learned from reading 20 books in 5 months is that I found out that I'd actually forgotten a lot, because a lot of the books that I read were actually rereads. Because one of the practices that I've implemented in my life is to reread books that I think are really, really important for me to know, because I'm already aware that I need to always be sharpening the saw, basically. There are a lot of books that I go back to. A few books that I go back to are The Way of the Superior Man by David Data, and another popular one I go back to a lot is How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie. Those are two books that I reread again. The book that I've reread the most has been Awaken the Giant Within by Tony Robbins. That's the book I've reread the most. And I'll probably be reading it again within the next couple of months as well. So I recommend that if you have a book that you think is really important, that you've got a lot of value from, that you've got a lot of useful information from, or perhaps even something else like you've got a lot of motivation from. So I highly recommend that you read that book more than once. Unless you have a photographic memory, it's very unlikely that you are actually going to remember all of that book. This is why a lot of teachers say to their students that you need to go back through your notes and reread them, and maths teachers, make you redo equations over and over and over again, because for something to be ingrained into your brain and for you to remember it, you need to repeat it. You need to go through it over and over and over again. And I think I first learned it from Tony Robbins, that repetition is the mother of skill. That's the only way you get good at anything. If you want to become good at public speaking, you need to obviously speak more often, or you need to practice your speech more often. It only makes sense that you need to do that with books as well, or even just articles that you think are really, really useful. So the fourth thing that I learned from reading 20 books in 5 months was my connection to my more spiritual side increased. Now, there were a couple of books in there, in these 20 books, that were a lot more spiritual, but even in the personal development books, and even some of the financial books that I read, there was an essence of spirituality in there. Like, you need to have this kind of sense of a higher purpose for your life, rather than kind of like living for yourself. You need to be doing something that has a meaning beyond your own existence. From one of the books I read, which was Autobiography of a Yogi, I got more into a certain type of yoga technique, a certain type of meditation called Kriya Yoga, which is basically the right way to kind of sit while you're meditating, essentially. And that's something that I put into my own practice, because I used to meditate laying down, but now I meditate sitting up. That's actually really improved my meditations, and it's made my brain a lot more clearer when I do that kind of thing in the morning if I have time. That's a new discipline that I'm trying to install in me, to meditate more often, even if it's just for something like 10 minutes, because I do get very busy. But I have had a deeper connection to my more spiritual side since reading more books. I felt a strengthening in my own spiritual beliefs, which kind of goes into my next point and my last point, which is I realized that my mind has a lot more mental chatter than I realized. So what I mean by this is I get distracted a lot. I get distracted by my own thoughts a lot. And reading, especially physical books, I have read audiobooks since I started on this new discipline of reading more books. The books I'm talking about in this are actually physical books. So what I realized is when I was reading is that I would have to go back and reread certain bits because I didn't read it enough. So I thought I was quite good at concentrating, but it turns out that I'm not as good as what I thought, at least. I realized that I can get distracted quite easily, which is quite good. It's quite good to have that awareness within yourself that your mind can wander off to different places, and the frequency of it. In a way, it's kind of helped with my concentration, because I don't want to have to go back and reread something, because if I do that, I feel like I'm wasting my time. Now, obviously, I'm not wasting my time because I do need to go back and read it, but I feel like if I'm not concentrating, then I'm wasting my time because I know I'm going to have to go back and reread it. That's really, really helped me, that self-awareness of knowing that I can get distracted quite easily and I can let my thoughts get away with me sometimes. And when you're reading a physical book, you need to concentrate harder than when you're listening to an audiobook. Now, obviously, in order to listen to an audiobook, you need to concentrate, but you're a lot more aware of it. You're a lot more aware that you're not concentrating when you're actually reading a physical book. So it's helped with my concentration quite a lot as well. So was reading these books worth it? And yeah, I would say it was worth it, even if it was just the simple act of being more disciplined, of waking up a lot earlier, just waking up an hour earlier. That simple new discipline has made me feel so much more better about myself in terms of reading, especially because I really would beat myself up if I didn't have enough time to read the books that I have. So being able to actually do that and finding time for it and actually doing something that I really value, like learning things and reading, that's really, really helped, because I do really value reading. I do really value having time to sit with a book. And knowing that I can create that time for myself and having the self-discipline to do so instead of staying in bed for an hour longer has really increased my self-esteem. It's made me feel a lot more better about myself. And it also showed me that I do actually have a lot more self-control than what I realized. Now, I already had a sense I had self-control, but I didn't realize just how much self-control I can actually have. And that's something that's kind of opened my eyes a little bit after reading all of these books. So these are the 20 books that I read. Money Master the Game by Tony Robbins. How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie. The Magic of Thinking Big by David Schwartz. How to Develop Self-Confidence and Influence People by Public Speaking by Dale Carnegie. The Richest Man in Babylon by George Clason. The Secret by Rhonda Byrne. Autobiography of a Yogi by Paramahansa Yogananda. Power vs. Force by David Hawkins. The Seasons of Life by Jim Rohn. The Power of Positive Thinking by Norman Vincent Peale. Who Moved My Cheese by Spencer Johnson. The One Thing by Gary Keller. I Can See Clearly Now by Dr. Wayne Dyer. The Subtle Art of Not Giving an F by Mark Manson. Rich Dad Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki. The Way of the Superior Man by David Data. See You at the Top by Zig Ziglar. Acres of Diamonds by Russell Cornwell. Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. Unshakable by Tony Robbins. If you found this video informative, then please leave a like and please subscribe. And I shall talk to you again very soon. Goodbye, guys.